Meet Marmalade. One of the things I talked about in my blog was about how difficult it is to explain about how to use puppets. Marmalade is one of my cat puppets, very, very popular with children. And one of the things you'll notice is I'm not looking permanently at Marmalade. What I'm doing is I'm talking to you and I'm stroking Marmalade, and Marmalade never stops moving. So by keeping Marmalade moving, she appears more believable. I've actually been told before at a cafe that pets aren't allowed, and I'm like, she's actually a puppet, you know. So it makes it more realistic. If you sort of wave a puppet out like that, sort of waving the puppet around, nobody believes in the puppet, you know. It's just like, it's a puppet, it's a puppet, it's a puppet, you know. But if you keep it small, keep it closed, also you'll notice that my arm is being hidden by the way I'm holding it. I'm able to swish the tail slightly using my fingers. It's all done very subtly, and occasionally I'll look down and maybe give her an extra stroke or something. But the puppet becomes very real, and then people are more likely to come up and talk to you, talk to the puppet. And I've found that's a very good way of breaking the ice with children and getting children to talk, to relax, to calm down, and to be happy to share any worries or anxieties. It also helps them to play with others in the playground, because if you then let them borrow the puppet and you talk about how to use the puppet, they might then, well, they'll find other children are sort of attracted to them, as it were, and they'll come and play with them. So that's Marmalade. I have other puppets, so I have loads of other puppets. The next one I'm going to show you is a little rabbit. Again, I tend to go very much for the puppets which are animals. I find children respond very well to them, and I find that they are just that they seem more real, and children will talk to them, children will confide in them. If you say, for example, that Flopsy here is having trouble with friendships, they'll ask why, and you'll say, well, you know, this is the problem, this is what's going on, and they will quite often give the puppet the advice, and it's advice that they then actually need to follow for themselves. Again, it's about not permanently looking at the puppet, or not constantly looking at it, maybe occasionally looking down, but keeping it quietly on the move, maybe stroking it like you would if you really had a rabbit in your hand. It's also, this one is particularly soft, and therefore the kids love stroking it. And I have puppets for different reasons. So I also have a couple of puppets which are there for their because they show things like shyness. So for example, Terry, my tortoise, will be inside his shell, and children will come and have a look, and then he'll come out really, really slowly. And the thing with the tortoise is that the movements have to be incredibly slow, because if they're fast, you know, tortoises don't sort of move at 100 miles an hour, they are slow moving. But it's also one where the children will quite often come up and have a look, and then he'll quickly retreat back into his shell, and that's what the children are doing. You know, this is very useful for children who themselves are shy, because they will then coax the turtle out of its shell and be sort of like, no, it's okay, it's okay. And so you do the whole sort of like tentatively having a look, moving towards them and gradually getting closer to them, very, very slowly again. And then again, if they make a sudden movement, you can bring him right back into his shell, which is really useful. So it's about these sudden movements and things. And then you can talk and sort of like, well, why do you think he's frightened? And they'll be saying, well, I'm not going to hurt him. And then it opens up a conversation about what makes you frightened and things like that. But again, it's these really slow, careful, gentle movements. In the same way, I have, sorry, leaning forwards here, I have a, a porcupine. And he's useful because he's a very prickly character, being a porcupine, so you get him all spiked up. I don't know how well you can see that on the camera, but he's nice and spiky. He's called Spiky, obviously. He can roll into a ball and disappear, again very much like the tortoise does. He can come back out and they can say he's really spiky. You can say, well, feel him, and they'll feel him, they'll stroke him and say, oh, she's quite soft. And then you can talk about how people can appear scary but not be scary really, or difference between inside and outside, what's real, what's not real. I mean, again, it opens up all sorts of conversations. But that secret, again, as I said before, is to always just very gently with puppets, not looking at them, not, I mean, obviously you're going to look at them sometimes, but not focusing on them. So you're having a conversation, but while you're having that conversation, you are still moving that puppet very gently, and it's a constant, and it makes the puppet seem more real if it's just constantly slightly on the move, and if you're not staring at it. Again, as I say, it's not that sort of like, this is the puppet, look at me, I'm a puppet, yay, which is what kids will often do. But if you then can talk to them, I've had pupils who have a puppet as their partner when they're doing work. This one here, next one here, Ratbag, beautiful little puppet here. First puppet I got, this is actually a second version of the first puppet I got. The first one is still at my last school. The school ended up being given it and I bought myself another one. This is a fun puppet. His little mouse, called him Ratbag, can't, you know, that's just his name. There was a child with AS who really struggled with partner work, and it was in maths in particular, really struggled with it. So we basically gave him Ratbag as a partner. And whenever he was doing partner work in maths, then he would have Ratbag sit on the desk and, you know, not using him as a puppet, just having him sat at the desk. And therefore, you know, he would talk through the problem just as he would if it had been another person, but he would talk through it with Ratbag, and it made him feel safe. It gave him the security and the safety to actually do partner work. And I know eventually he was able to do partner work with another person. But initially that was a big step for him, and having a puppet. Now that was a primary school child. Don't know if it would work as a partner for a secondary child, but it might work as just a security thing. Certainly in primary school it works very well as a partner, as a talking partner, a working partner. But I have used puppets in both primary and secondary, always to good effect. When I get a puppet, the importance is to know your puppets, because every puppet is slightly different, they feel different, they work differently. So what I tend to do when I have a puppet for the first time is I go around with it to all sorts of places. Now the other puppets I use are the finger puppets. These are really useful because they just sort of sit in the palm of your hand. This one's a squirrel, I don't know how well you can see it. So it sits in the palm of your hand, and you know, you just walk around, you're visiting a classroom, you're doing a walkabout, and you've got it with you. And again, kids will talk to it, play with it, often want to have it on their desk. Now in secondary school I found the finger puppets were quite useful as the ones that people had on their desks, because, or in their bag, because they were small, they were less obvious. This particular one, I had again, this is now a new version of it. There was one in my school that I had an AS child who used to just basically keep this with them, and it was just their safety net. It was just a way of them feeling comfortable in class when they were about to have a meltdown. This just somehow calmed them. It was somebody who liked birds a lot, obviously, and that worked well for that person. So it's about knowing the puppet, knowing the person. These are just, as I say, a small sample of my puppets. I'll get back to Marmalade. I do have a lot of other puppets, and it's about using the right one at the right time. The thing I've found really useful is basically playground duty. Whenever I'm on playground duty, I've always taken the puppet out with me. The kids will come and say, oh, what puppet have you got today, miss? Things like that. There's the younger children, it'll be, is it real, you know? And you sort of like, what do you think? And you let them know it's a puppet, and it doesn't stop them from treating it as though it's real. They still confide in it, they still get comfort from it, they know it's a puppet, they'll tell you it's a puppet, they'll tell each other it's a puppet, but that's fine. But as I say, if you don't get used to it, then it will look not very real. It won't look like a real creature. It will look stilted, and it won't get the same response. So there's no point in using puppets if you're not comfortable with them. As the puppeteer, you have to be confident, comfortable, able to just ignore it and feel like it's a part of you. And if you can do that, then you'll find this is a very good way of working with certain children. So I hope it works for you. Thank you.